Baylor men's basketball, TCU this weekend. Big enough game because TCU is sneaky good in the Big 12, and Baylor is what? Like if you had to describe what Baylor is, because I think Kansas has the best starting five in the league, BYU is the best offensive team in the league, Houston's the best defensive team in the league. Where does Baylor fit into this conference right now?
It's a great question, Drake. They're edging, okay? They are still in that top tier, but they are not a finished product.
They're edging hard.
Is the way I'm optimistically looking at it.
Okay.
I had to be talked back down this week on Locked On Baylor, coming off the 2 straight losses. Both games I thought they should have won, especially the UT game last Saturday that came down to the buzzer beater. They still have the talent on this team that makes them better than last year's team, which we'd agree was a bit of an underachiever. Mm-hmm. And I looked this week, Drake, because a lot of Baylor fans, and, you know, I understand this. I was definitely one of them. Will compare every team now to that 2021 national championship team. That team was one of the best teams this century in college basketball.
Yes.
Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts to that. So I looked at the statistical comparison and where they rank, and they actually are a lot closer than I thought. Like the rebounding differential is basically the same. The 3-point shooting is similar, although that 2021 team was number one basically the whole year. So it's not that far off. But then there are some other big ones, like in conference, they were winning by 14 points a game, which is just absurd. It's insane. Even when you add those Bruce Weber, Kansas State teams in the early aughts, Iowa State teams in there, that's still insane. And so I'm thinking, okay, let me compare this to something else. You remember last year's UConn team?
I think so, yes.
They won 6 games in the NCAA tournament, each by double digits. Is it one of the best teams this century? No, but one of the best runs this century, absolutely. So I compared them and those stats that we all love. Coaches love them too when you're talking about playoff basketball, right? Offensive rebounding, turnover differential, true shooting. Baylor beat them in all of those categories. So I'm not just going to say Baylor's going to go and win the national championship. There's a lot that goes into that. But statistically, they are a team that can make a deep run, if not win a national championship. They are still on that statistical pace. In fact, UConn last year was out-turnovered every game by the averages. They were turning it over more than they were forcing, and Baylor's still +3 in that category. So all of those things that we love to see in a national champion, Baylor's still well off in statistically. Now, that said, that doesn't mean there aren't holes in the team. They're still getting better defensively. 1 field goal in the last 8 minutes against Texas last Saturday for what we're supposed to be thinking of as a top 10 offensive team, because they are still top 10 in a ton of categories in the nation. Can't think that way anymore. They need to get better at that. And the thing I think that is missing right now that vintage Scott Drew teams have had, I know there's some Big 12 fans who will revel in this. I don't know if it was all Jerome Tang, but it's starting to look that way in terms of set plays. Baylor was always, even when they were just a good team, not a great team, always really good out of a timeout. Yeah. Fran Fraschilla would fall all over himself talking about how good they were out of timeouts, right? Mm-hmm. And they were. He was right. The last 2 years hadn't been there. And when they need that basket, they haven't had a play for it, because this was the same problem they had last year too. And I said it in after the Kansas State game, weirdly enough, against Tang. Baylor got the ball with 20 seconds left in a tie game, and I'm like, why aren't they calling a timeout here? Cincinnati in the last game before against Baylor called a timeout in this situation and drew up a great freaking play. They didn't score, but they had an awesome look at the basket. Why isn't Baylor doing that? I don't know. So that gives me pause for concern, but they are still in.
I'd even use the Texas timeout example, where you could call a timeout against Texas and stop the game-winning bucket.
Yeah, which in hindsight, obviously they should have done. You do give Rodney Terry another opportunity with the whiteboard. We know.
Oh no, not Rodney Terry.
This guy he is, man. That's like giving Krzyzewski another shot.
Not Rodney Terry. No.
Well, I came back to the point that your defense should be able to stop that.
Yeah.
If I'm a coach, I should be able to trust.
Well, you can't have Jacoby Walter guarding a guy who is physically incapable of scoring tightly on the 3-point line. I would rather that guy airball a 3 than the opposing team hit a game winning shot.
I'll give him a look. Yeah. So still in that upper echelon to answer your last question, to your first question.
Before we close, I think TCU reminds me a lot of Baylor. TCU reminds me a lot, and they may not have had a better non-conference. I think that's why the two teams are ranked where they are. But I think TCU, the same team that won in Waco last year, gives Baylor a run for its money on Saturday.
I think it's a tough game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't just say this is going to be a W, even though it should be for Baylor. TCU is this classic example of what the Big 12 is now, because last week, how much were we praising them, as they should have been? And then 2 tight losses later, and now the experts are saying, including their own people, Frogs of War, that they need a couple wins just to feel good about making the tournament right now.
Yep.
They are a tournament team. They absolutely have the talent to do it, and they've had some big wins on the schedule so far. So Baylor gets the week off going into this game. They hadn't played since last Saturday against Texas. We'll see if that's good or bad.
And you saw what big breaks could do for Baylor when they played Michigan State.
Yes, we'll see if that's good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good in that there's a reset in the middle of the season, which all Big 12 teams will get. They'll all get that week off at some point.
Middle of the season. This usually comes in February, if not early March, but not this year.
And it's a way to kind of, figure some things out and rest the body a little bit, but there could be some rust. Who knows, man? I'm going to be at the Foster Pavilion tomorrow. Bought a ticket.
Yeah, you did.
2 tickets.
Do you know, what's interesting to me is that the media and fans have access to the same Wi-Fi in the Foster Pavilion. So anybody in that stadium could just stream things on their phone during timeouts if they wanted to. You could watch a TV show or live sports or anything that you wanted to.
ESPN Plus.
ESPN Plus, which is the carrier provider for a couple of national leagues. That's Cameron Stewart of Locked On.
Out of market. Yeah, that's great.
Locked On Baylor, ESPN Central Texas. I'm Drake Toll. Today, I'm going to announce what my new job is. Finally.
What? On a Friday, you loser, man? Nobody's going to see it.
2 months. That's what I said. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande. Baylor. Say Baylor. Say it.
Baylor.
Bears.